Christina, now, all of us know about that inner critic, don't we? That little voice in our heads that tells us all the things that aren't right. And it's that little critic whose sidekick is the saboteur, the one who puts a spoke in the wheel when you're determined you're going to do something. And then this little saboteur goes, no, you're not. Christina, can you share with us a bit more about the saboteur in the light, please?
Yes, will do. Thanks, Wendy. So I'm a bit nervous, so bear with me. So when you guys think of the saboteur, you may think automatically that your life is over or your life is ruined. And most people do associate with the saboteur through the shadow. And in my own personal life story, though, and my life's challenges, I could have easily gone down the path of self-saboteur. There were times in my life where I gave up. I actually gave up. It was too much for me. I was done. I lost all faith and hope, and I had no more stamina to keep going. Until one day, I had to make a conscious decision. I had to use the saboteur in the light. I grew up very poor. I lived in various housing commissions. My late father was given a year to live 40 years ago. And at the time, he was unable to work and he needed to support his family. Where he was actually looking for work, but no one would actually employ him because of his health condition. He had heart and lung transplant, which made it hard for him to actually get a job. So for this reason, why we lived in housing commissions. And unfortunately, people who live in housing get a bad rap. And I was one of them. A lot of things have happened to me throughout my life, but what hit home for me, though, was postnatal depression. I lived with it pretty much in silence for a very long time. I loved being pregnant. I thought parenting and motherhood was going to be easy, it was going to be fun, and it was going to be like the ads, love at first sight. It was going to be like the ideal, perfect mom, perfect kids, perfect life, the whole shebang. But boy, was I wrong. I received no support or education informing myself, like new parents like myself, about what I was getting myself into. And it was a shock to my system. Did you guys know that 1 in 5 new mums and 1 in 10 new dads are affected by postnatal depression? It affects your moods, your sleep, your appetite, and feelings of hopelessness. And what it did for me, though, I was constantly feeling sad. I was so low in my moods and I was tearful most of the time. And there was no joy or excitement. I was constantly crying and in severe anxiety and panic attacks. I felt devastated and extremely scared. But what happened was the most, it was the feeling ashamed. I felt guilty and alone. And it was very hard for me to come to terms that I was having a mental health issue because of the stigma associated with it. I was petrified. I was terrified for speaking up because I believed I was a terrible mother. What would others think of me? So I believe it is very important for us right now to have this open conversation like this in order to bring awareness, because we don't have the luxury to sabotage this issue. People are crying out for help every single day because they can't speak up, they can't vocalize it, or they're afraid or embarrassed. So having open conversation like today is critical because before it's too late, we're saving someone's life. And this issue can pretty much affect anybody. And just because you think someone has their life together doesn't mean it's perfect. I came very close to losing it all, sabotaging my whole life. I hit rock bottom and I didn't want to be here anymore. But then something miraculous happened. A realization popped into my head. It was clear as crystal, and I realized at that moment in my desperation, I had to dig deep. I had to make a conscious decision, or else I wouldn't have made it. I cried and cried every day, but I knew I had to make a decision. So today, I wanted to share with you the true purpose of the saboteur. Yes, in the shadow, its job is to sabotage you, but in the light, it's trying to get you where you need to be, to alert you before you actually sabotage yourself. It allowed me to see my life clearly and to see through the illusions of my mind where the saboteur actually lives. And the thing is, my mind was constantly feeding me lies. I was not good enough. I was unlovable. There was something wrong with me. And I was constantly comparing myself with other moms, thinking everybody else was doing a much better job than I was. You know, I was a failure. You know, what was wrong with me? And it was just torment. And then I realized that I couldn't keep going like this anymore. It was not healthy. I was actually stuck. And I knew something had to change. I needed to flip the script, to change my language, to change my vocabulary, but to change my perception. So that's why I chose to use the saboteur in my life, because I know if I don't use the saboteur in my life, it was going to undermine me. And the saboteur in the shadow blocks your awareness. It actually doesn't allow you to see clarity. But once you understand the saboteur in your life, you can actually learn and hear those challenges and those warning of the inner critic, saving yourself from endless grief and regrets. So this is the saboteur in the light. It is the guardian of conscious choice. It is self-awareness. It is about you making that self-empowerment so then you can make positive actions. So you can actually become an advocate for change and then the carrier of truth and light. So that is the saboteur in the light, because it led me to see my own light through new light and perspective. It gave me new direction, focus, and hope, so that I can create a better future for myself, for my own family, and those people around me. The journey was not easy, far from it. But what it did taught me, though, it taught me to be strong, to be a person of my word and action. I had to be consistent and be mindful of my thoughts. And I was persistent and patient. And people who know me know that I take radical steps and action, because in order for change to happen, you got to do the work. It had to come from inside and out. So I started working with people who are well known in the spiritual teachers, and I got really useful and practical tools to actually help me shift, because I had to make those uncomfortable decisions in order to empower myself. Because if I didn't do that, I would have been gone. I couldn't afford to make any more excuses, because I didn't have the luxury to go down the path of self-saboteur. If you allow the saboteur in the shadow to take over or to run unconsciously, it has the potential to take you down. In the light, though, it helps you to get back up, to choose again and to shine. And this is why I use archetypes and forgiveness for myself, because I grew up in a family of mental health issue. I learned really early on that I couldn't rely on, unfortunately, I shouldn't say that, but you know, I didn't have a mum, and my dad was sick, and I didn't have a family member. Like, my family all had mental health, serious mental health issue, and I was on my own. And I couldn't turn around to ask my mum, can you please help me about my kids? I couldn't tell anyone, because I didn't want to impose on them. So I did it by myself. And in front of me, everything was fine. People sort of, that's why it's very important to my heart, this topic, because never assume anything about how a person looks, because you just don't know what goes on internally. So that's why it's my mission to actually bring that awareness about mental health, but also living in housing commission, because so many people just automatically assume everyone in that same category. No, man, I struggled. My poor father, I lost him 3 months ago. And now looking back, and I realized how much trouble he went through. He didn't speak a word of English. He came to Australia having to look after his family, and he did so, and I had no idea what was going on until I got older, and I realized I had to learn to use the saboteur in the light, because the saboteur is all about conscious choice. And I had to make that choice, because what happened that day when I wanted to end it all, I heard a voice saying to me, of my kid, my oldest son, what would happen to him? And then I kept saying to myself, I wanted to go home. But then I realized to myself, but I was at home. So who was saying I wanted to go home? And then that's when I started going, okay, well, surely there must be more to me than what I see in front of me. And I realized I've got to finish up. So this work is, I'm very passionate about what I do. So it's close to my heart because I am a living proof of self-healing and transformation. So if any one of you would like to know more about my full life story and the archetypes and the forgiveness program, please feel free to get in touch with me to see what I can do for you. But for now, I wish you well, take care, and I thank you so much for listening to me. Christina, thank you.